Most people say that they want to change, but they just truly don't understand what it means. And it's not because they're lying, but because it's far harder than most realize. And that's exactly why the majority of people will never, even if they really want to, change their habits, their behaviors, their actions. Because real change comes at a cost, a loss. And it's not just in one way, but on three different levels. It's neurological, it's emotional, and social. And so if you want to reinvent yourself, if you want a new life, you need to understand why you haven't changed yet, which is exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. And the first reason why change is that difficult is because your brain doesn't want you to change. Ever since you were young, your brain's basically only job has been to adapt to your reality and to wire its neural connection to facilitate your life. It means that neurons in your brain traces routes, patterns of essentially electrical cords that evolves depending on the experiences that you've been through or just the actions that you took. The more you use a certain pathway, the stronger it gets and the easier it is to fire it. This is why in neuroscience they say that neurons that fire together, wire together. Over time, if you wire those neurons together a lot of times repeatedly, it becomes a habit. And a habit is nothing else than a behavior you've engaged in so repeatedly that it became automatic. It's something that's hardwired into your brain, something that you don't have to engage it consciously because you know it so well. Things like driving, cooking for some people, things that you do repeatedly on a daily basis. And why change is so hard is because your brain has been wired to keep you safe and to adapt to the environment you grew up in, which does not mean at all optimal or successful. It just means that you have been designed by the environment you surrounded. And so if the environment you've been surrounded with your whole life did not conduct to healthy habits or things that you want to be part of your life right now, change is going to be especially hard since that environment has reinforced all those patterns that you've developed over time. Therefore, for you to change, you will have to abandon patterns that have probably been firing for the past, I don't know, depending on your age, 10, 20, 30 years. If you don't want to get engaged in those, you will have to stop firing them. Now, the problem is that when you've been doing something repeatedly for the past 20 years, it's really hard to stop engaging in it as it's second nature. But if you cannot not use your phone for more than 30 minutes, it's because your brain has been wiring all these systems and this neural network around your phone and its use. And so if you want to change, you will have to know first that your brain doesn't want to let go of those patterns that it has built into your mind because those have been useful for the past 20 years. Why would you let go of it now? That's just the first step, because the second step is to actually rebuild new connections and trace new patterns for the change to be possible and to become real. And if that's called brain plasticity, which is the ability for the brain to organize itself in reaction to its environment, this gets harder with age. And if you're past teenage years, adolescence, and young adulthood, then it's probably going to be harder for you. But doesn't mean impossible. It just means that the patterns you've been wiring are really strong. Doesn't mean that you can't break them or build new ones. The second idea as why changing is so hard is because your emotions, they want to keep you trapped. And there's this similar idea to understand when it comes to your emotions is that they'll get in your way of you changing because your brain has been familiarized with those loops, which we call emotional loops, those patterns of acting that you use during daily life. Again, as a way to just make things easier for your brain and not to expend much energy. And the brain becomes familiar and maybe even addicted and tends to go back to always the same emotional loops because, well, those are reassuring because you experience them on a daily basis and you know exactly what the outcome is if you behave a certain way. The thing is that this, again, is not optimal nor is going to lead you success because it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. If you cultivate those loops, you will become a victim to them. When it comes to negative patterns, we usually talk about defense mechanisms, which can create patterns you can get stuck in. That might explain why you are not prone to changing. It's because you're using defense mechanisms that are keeping you stuck where you are right now. This can come from unprocessed emotions that you're not facing right now, emotions from the past. Some people have been affected by trauma and it's going to prevent them from changing. All those things, it could be danger, could be negative patterns in your life, are keeping you stuck. And if you don't understand what's going on and the emotional loop that's playing in front of you, you're likely to stay trapped because you will keep replaying it over and over again as this has become a automatic mechanism. Again, why would you do that? Why would your brain do that? It's because it feels familiar, and familiar means comfortable, and comfortable, even if negative, means reassuring and not dangerous, even when considering that in the long run this can lead you to pretty much maybe not ruin your life, but for some people, yes, it's going to ruin their lives, because they're going to react these patterns over and over again until it's too late, and just to realize that they've wasted the past 20 years just replaying the same relationships, for example. Overall, there's something to be said about change in general, whether it's neurological, whether it's emotional, or even social. We're going to talk about it in a second. It's that there's immense anxiety associated with change, because change means exposing yourself to something that you don't know, so to the unknown, which in nature can mean death, which in nature can mean danger, which in nature could mean, getting closer to something that's really going to affect you profoundly. Therefore, this is the reason why your brain, your body, your emotions are not letting you change. It's because they're more scared of you changing and facing the unknown than they are to keep replaying everything that you've been engaging in for the past 10 years, for example, because it's just familiar environment. And now the last reason why it's harder for you to change, it's because people don't want you to change. Now, this is the past two reasons have been about you. This third one is about you in a social setting. So it's you and the people that you're surrounded with, your social environment. Unfortunately, and this is the reality, and I don't hear much people talking about this, especially not on social media. It is not in people's best interests for you to change. If you change, you will threaten their group cohesion, which is, if social psychology 101, not what you want to do. Because if you leave the group, if you tend to break relationships because you're changing, because you're evolving, you will expose the fragility of the group, and you'll, yes, break the link of trust that you had established before with those people. In a social setting, this is the last thing that you want, because it means that the group cohesion is weak, and that the bond between individuals can be easily broken, which is dangerous for a social group, because it means that anyone can exit the group at any time and the group can just dissolve. And yes, if the most frightening thing is probably the fear in the unknown, the second is the fear of being rejected, social rejection, because it's just a primal reaction. Humans are not powerful creatures. We don't have that much strength, which means that in nature, the only thing that protects us is the group, and it's the ability to have this social intelligence and to be part of the tribe. Because if you are going to face adversity alone, you're not going to do much against the tiger in nature. So humans have not been designed at all to end up alone, which means it scares you to death to change and let go of a part of your social identity, because it may mean that you have to exit all those social groups that you've been part of for a long time. It's also going to reflect to people that change is possible because you're doing it, and that they have the responsibility over their choices, which is usually not something that people want to be in front of. It means that your growth forces other people to confront themselves to their current reality and maybe even their inability to change, but they want to do it. And that's the reason why changing is so hard. It's because it happens on different levels. It's multidimensional. If your brain doesn't want it, if your emotions get in the way, and if your social group prevents you from changing, then it might explain why it's so hard for you to change. You literally have to overcome most of the hardwired systems and the primal instincts you've been given in order to change for the better. Whether that means, again, changing your behavior, changing the way you live, changing your habits, your lifestyle, whatever it is. Change means a death of a part of the neuronal pathways that you're not going to use anymore because you're letting go of it, of the emotions that you've been cultivating for a long time, and of the social component to your life that you were engaging in before. So this is why it's really hard, and this is why most people will never change. But now they have some cues and keys about why this is so hard. Hopefully you can do better and stack the odds in your favor. So anyway, this is the last video I'm going to put out before I leave on vacation for 2 months. But I'll come back in September with some more subjects and some more video ideas. And if you have any recommendations, feel free. I hope this helps. And in the meantime, trust the process.